Okay, you tell me yes. Thank you very much. I love you, Mincho. I love you. And yeah, I told him the same. It's just a belly, right? Imagine he went to do the last edition of Google. One of his best friends called me and he says, "It's all true. He's not here." And you can imagine that seeing a 20-story 4K, well, it's not at all.
How do you see suicide? What do you think?
I mean, I've never been in such a fulfilling place before, so happy, so well connected. It's been a radically positive change for me.
Comunidad Conquistadora, welcome to another episode of this, your podcast with me as your mentor. Today, I have a very special guest whom I met at one of the conferences I gave on mental health. And in this forum where we met, he told me a story he experienced firsthand, a family experience that divided his life in two. And from that moment on, he decided not to let that conflict be in vain, and to use that crisis to grow, but also to help other people become aware and be better without resorting to outside things. Mujono, kuijono, to numb pain and stressful situations, or even to protect ourselves from many things we see as fun that can lead us to something very chaotic. Eddie del Villar, how are you, my friend? Welcome to Conquista tu Mundo.
Johnny Abraham, Conquista tu Mundo here. Thank you for that introduction.
It's a pleasure to have you here, especially because of the life mission you have, which is to help young people become more aware of their decisions. Let's put it that way. But before we get ahead of ourselves, ¿por qué estás hoy aquí? That mission, I would like you to give us a bit of context about that story, which I know you've told in several places, but today I want you to reconnect with it and tell us how it was for you and why are you here in this chair.
I'll tell you a bit about what happened, the situation in general, and how I think it has developed. This starts, yes, unfortunately, with a personal matter, with my brother's suicide, and that was in 2022. The truth is that it was a shock for my whole family. I think that, in general, what we knew about suicide was very little, basically nothing. We think that this monster really isn't going to happen, that it doesn't happen in these families, that it's not going to happen to us like it did. Honestly, my idea of suicide was that it happened to people who were very depressed, who had a strong addiction, or that there was a huge pain that was very visible. And with my brother, it was completely the opposite. And I think it was also an opportunity to really see what I would do and what I find. My brother was 26 years old, but he wasn't like those people who, with my son and my friend's son, are just naturally spontaneous. They just believe in themselves, not even what I say. They do it and they actually succeed at it, right? Apparently not everything was going well, and he was integrated into my school, improved by the environment, an athlete, a soccer player, a marathon runner, then a tennis player, very affectionate, with an amazing girlfriend, a Sim Collins. He lived with all his best qualities, fair-skinned. This one, who really was like this dream of saying, well, this kid is making it. He's been accepted to go do his master's. He's about to go to Chicago for one of the best master's programs in the world. So it really occurred to me, if this is what I want for my son someday, whom we have always loved. Because even though he was younger than me, many times he motivated me to be better and to keep achieving certain goals, you know. But then also, when we see these spectacular resumes, many times we don't stop to really ask how the person is doing and to know what they're really selling us. It's like those uncomfortable conversations, finding ourselves vulnerable. Honestly, we're never taught that. I think we live in a society that's always so focused on the economic side of things. Because, yes, the man has to be the one who provides the office, the business card, the status. We have to fear a lot that we have to put in the same amount in that. And I think that was the first thing I realized. I realized it through this whole process with my brother. Well, to make a long story short, that night, he had gone to a party with his friends, a dinner where, well, these brands cost me. Aaron and turned on given by sponsors. First, they drink all the alcohol as long as you take pictures and all that. The video is shared on social media in this scene. one of my brother's wishes. Has it been easy for him to get a lot with you? But sadly, it's very trendy in Mexico City, and in 3 places publicly. That's what I mean. These are hallucinogens combined with chocolate, and they're being used recreationally, which is extremely bad. There are so many situations, and we're going to talk about them right now. But my brother started going into psychosis, after being with his friends. In this scene where la otra fiesta donde fiestolitan, arriving at the party, he tells me to those sounds, it's good that you arrived, but you're not doing well. I imagine my brother, because really nothing, not like a bathroom, Pacho state. And with this unconsciousness, the truth is that not when he got to the bathroom, my brother comes out walking perfectly, but with that usual coherence, but happy, joyful, and far away. And he told me, is she done already? They're taking her in a little group, so let's go home. Not yet, they're coming for us. I remember going to the bar, we ordered a beer, and we started talking. And you could tell he was acting strange, like something just didn't click. It was really hard for him to come up with all the words to say anything. His speech was awkward, and you could tell something was wrong. I even made a joke about it. The guy never told me yes or no. He just avoided the topic, like he didn't want to talk about it. And now they're coming to pick us up. I take him to his apartment, and then it's 1 a.m. I'm heading to my apartment. Now, I've already spent some time with my wife. He calls me at 3 a.m, and I hadn't seen Fabian around anymore, as if he was in the East. And I said, Fer, what happened? He says, no, sorry, I wanted to call my dad. And I thought it was strange. It was the first time we got confused. We had been hanging out. And I said, Fer, is everything okay? He says, yes, yes. And I said, for what? And I said, what for? And he said to apologize to him. At that time, my mom and dad didn't have such a good relationship. And I thought, man, taking that extra step isn't always so easy. Well, on top of that, it's morning, it's 3 a.m, and besides, it's going to be virtual and for the market. He tells me, yes, it has. I also wanted to give him credit for that. I mean, at that moment, it also seemed strange to me. It was 3 a.m, like some time had already passed, and we've all had insomnia, right? At some point in our lives, we've all tossed and turned in bed at night, overthinking things, and for me, it was very easy to tell him, just count sheep or something like that, right? Tomorrow will be another day. And Cuero also says, yes, thank you very much. I love you, Mincho. And I also told him, same here, get some rest, right? Well, imagine he went to do the last one. Well, at 7 a.m, the next day, one of her best friends calls me and says, please, I need to be able to get treatment. She calls me for help, to be able to learn. I tell her, yes, I'm coming over. Just imagine what happened. And if I can help, she says, please, come here. You'll see. We'll see. And I'm already on my way there. I'm happy. Just imagine what happened and how much I want to go help them, right? I don't know if we need to send an ambulance. I mean, what can we do? She tells me, no, nothing. I can't do anything for you, though. Can you understand that pain and that shock of saying, that's a lie? I think you also have an excellent relationship with your brother. I have to admit that we have good relationships with our siblings. It's magical because in the end, this is the person who can reveal absolutely everything. And you don't have to wear these masks. They can understand you because your contexts are similar. They become not only your best friend, but also your mentor and your partner in crime. Where there are so many things that when they say these words to me, even though I've done it, I say that's just an act. My brother isn't dead. Something must have happened to him. And I'm on my way there, but I was in denial. So I remember dropping my wife off, going to her apartment, and it felt like they were playing a cruel joke on me the whole time.
But your stress was through the roof, right?
My stress was through the roof, obviously wanting to get there as quickly as possible. I remember starting to have conversations with my wife, like if it did happen, what could have happened? We said, well, maybe their friends showed up, but they weren't there. They probably got home at 4 a.m. They had gone out to the club. And I said, well, maybe they kept drinking and maybe something like alcohol poisoning, some kind of accident. I imagined a lot of possibilities. Suicide was the last thing. I mean, suicide didn't even cross my mind, of course. I couldn't even imagine. When we got to the apartment, my brother was out on the street acting cocky. I remember parking the car. So my brother's 2 friends came out. They hugged me, devastated. One of them became mine too. They took my drunk law and my inferior law. Arrived with the police officers. proof that the police didn't tell them who you are, law of their brother's group. I don't know what. And at that moment, they start telling me, hey, your brother had debts. Your brother was an alcoholic. Your brother used substances. His girlfriend had broken up with him. No, I remember they started telling me several things and I said, she's not your bitch. I mean, just so you know, I don't even know if it's my brother. You have no idea if it's my brother. And a bit of a lie, right? I do remember that moment as being very sober and with mom. And my mom says, yes, yes, sorry, come in. No, what happened is I know myself and yes, it really was my mom, right? You can imagine that seeing a body fall 20 stories is devastating. It's not something you'd wish on even your worst enemy, right? I think this is also one of the things that motivates me today to talk about all this, that things do happen and we need to be aware so they don't happen again. Because what I did afterwards, I think, is what many here would do, which is to investigate the reason behind the situation. I think with suicide, we always want to find that letter, that explanation. I remember going into my brother's apartment, searching everywhere, and not finding anything at all. And I kept asking myself, why? I'm going to help the police. We no longer had access to the security cameras in the apartment building. The police had already seen them. They were under investigation. They realized that my sister had gone up to the rooftop alone, so one day it wasn't a homicide case, it was a suicide case. We had to give statements at the station. They had my sister's mother and friends there, some suspects. That's the truth. The whole process was really unpleasant. And I do remember that when we were at the station and making this statement, the first person who really said to me, I'm very sorry. I mean, at that moment, I cried and said, I really appreciate it. 3 hours had passed and no one had said to me, I'm sorry for your loss. And then I started to think that it's not something personal. I imagine that these people see these cases every day, cases worse than mine, and they put up this barrier and this shield. But somehow that little bit of empathy, just saying to someone, I'm very sorry, can make a difference. And indeed, everything seems that way.
I'll say it again, and I imagine a lot of people have said it, but I'm really sorry because seeing you and obviously empathizing with you really gets to me. If it had happened to me with my brother or with a friend, well, it's something I wouldn't even know how to react to, you know? There are a lot of things I want to ask you, but how did you find the strength not to fall and to get through all of this? Or did you just have no other choice? Because, well, the easiest thing would have been to play the victim and say, I don't want to live anymore either, right? So, how did you experience this? And what made you want to get to the bottom of this whole situation?
Which is also kind of allowed, right? When someone goes through a process like this, if the person goes back to using substances, people say, yeah, poor thing, he just lost his brother. So it's like you have that chance in society to not make it public. I remember that something that helped us the most in my process was all the help from therapy. Talking to a professional. I had already been to therapy. My mom had already been to therapy. We know the advantages it has. So when they told us there are professionals dedicated to overcoming grief, to the methodology, we were like, absolutely. What can I say? It was a factor in many ways, but I do remember that 3 grief counselors came to the house where we talked with them, and one of them told me, look, after these events, there are 2 options. Either you let yourself fall and see when you get back up, or you take everything that happened to you and transform it, and you become the same person but more efficient, and you have greater motivation to do better things in life. And since I heard that, I said, I want to go that way, so that's just how I am. And besides, we had the whole circle of truth. I will always be very grateful that the family came back together with us, that my friends stayed united for 6 months and checked on me every day. How are you doing? We're here. Their presence honestly was a huge comfort. And you could see that being close to my wife, I think everything you build up to that moment, which breaks you, also helps you so much more.
A supportive community, without a doubt, and that kindness and empathy from people which is what we were saying about being able to ask someone, how are you? Genuinely, not just in passing, hey, I'm seeing you today. How are you? And not just the usual, how are you? Fine. And you? No. Hey, are you really okay? Is there anything I can help you with? How's your life going? How are you? Because I think people, like you said, we go through different situations with different masks, and we really show very little of ourselves. We're ashamed to feel pain. We're ashamed to fail. We're ashamed not to have and to accumulate and achieve what everyone else apparently is achieving in love, in money, in their bodies. And many times, which wasn't the case with your brother, but many times people and many of my female students who come to me, or people who come to me for support, tell me, Johnny, I wanted to take my own life because I broke up with someone, or because things went badly at work, or because I had a lot of debt. And what you're saying about a support community, about using that crisis to come out stronger and everything, well, these are wake-up calls that we're giving you today with all our love to tell you everything is temporary, both the good and the bad. You have to enjoy the good things and you have to get through the bad things. So don't give up just because something is going wrong. Instead, seek professional help. Look for perspective. Look for ways to get out of the situation or to improve the situation. But not always. And we're going to talk about that right now. Or rather, suicide is not the way. We'll get to that topic in a moment, but I want you to elaborate a little more for us. Eri, what led your brother to make that decision? Because that's a lot of what you talk about now. And I also want to raise awareness among moms, dads, and everyone who's listening to us. What are you going to put into your body?
Before we get to that, I want to go deeper into what you're saying, which is very important and very valuable. It's an opportunity to talk. I mean, today in all the research we've done on suicide, because we know very little about suicide, we know about the people who have attempted it, they match it, and then we can look at the lives these people have, and through that, that's where the research is. But how many people like my brother really don't talk about it? Or many times, as happens in Mexico, it still remains a taboo. And the people who do it often declare it as if it were an accident. They don't know more. They don't know another story about these people. So it really has a bit of what we call kazaputos. And the worst fear, the worst enemy of this suicide is the one that talks to me about it.
Yes.
Because really when you talk, it's the pain that we all feel and we can't minimize the pain. A shared pain is a divine pain. So externalizing it helps us put it in perspective and see where we can go and what we can do. And the part you mentioned about vulnerability, about the question of the 100 hesitant ones, starts with oneself. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, because that's part of it too, we think that vulnerability is for the weak, that the brave always have to be okay, my love. No, the brave ones are the ones who really accept themselves as vulnerable and do something with that vulnerability. Because we all go through problems and we all have different issues in our lives that we have to overcome. But if we don't face them, if we don't go through them, like you say, they stay stuck there, and many times you end up turning to substance use.
Once again, that's right. To numb yourself, to distract yourself, to forget, to avoid living your reality.
And I think that's exactly what happened to me and what happened to my brother or sister, because these things are completely normalized in this society. Where you start drinking alcohol, nowadays the statistics are there. In Mexico, people start drinking alcohol on average at the age of 12. And when you start with this substance, well, you don't stop. Your brain doesn't finish developing until you're 22 years old. And when you put these substances into your body, marijuana, alcohol, before your brain finishes developing, then it doesn't develop in the best way. And your whole frontal lobe is affected. The whole part of your decision-making, risk-taking, self-esteem. So that's where a vicious cycle starts, where we need substances in order to interact with other people. That's extremely wrong. And it starts at a very early age.
Yes, and like you said, it's very normalized and people even get offended. If you don't drink, you ruin my night. How can you not drink? Or it's just a little chocolate. Don't be ridiculous. Yes, I agree.
And there's still a lot of social pressure, and nobody teaches us to say no, to set boundaries, to know who we can cry with, right? Because nowadays, well, you and I are older and we know perfectly well how to say no. But when you're a teenager or you're 16 or 17 years old, What matters most to you is fitting in, right? So that's how you start. And this situation keeps getting worse and worse until you get to things like chocobos, which, well, yes, you do it. And besides, it's not like a dealer gives it to you in a shady way. No, no, it comes from your friends. Usually it's from your friends because of their good experiences and they don't want anything bad to happen to you. And they want to share something that already happened to them in a positive way and they want to share it with you.
Yeah.
The problem is that we have a tremendous lack of information in the world. What usually happens with drugs is that they don't affect you right away. Rather, they affect you in the medium and long term. And that's when the vibes start getting destroyed, when absolutely everything starts falling apart, when you start getting hooked on substances. In my brother's case, it was something that started much earlier. When my brother got into this chocobio, apparently he was experiencing psychosis. And I say apparently because the truth is we'll never really know. And we can't put all the responsibility on that alone either. I think there are a lot of things behind the fact that my brother, for example, never went to therapy, that he's not among the vulnerable in connecting with transmissions and even his own substance use. I think that when you use a substance or alcohol, it's because we're covering up some pain and because something isn't working in our lives, something we're not dealing with, right? We're actually just numbing it. So I think it was a combination of things. And when my brother takes that substance, well, he does go into psychosis because later we had access to his cell phone where the last message he left us was nothing great. Before he jumped, where we had access to the cameras, where we saw him going up and down the stairs of his building, completely naked. When my brother and another person are up in the pulcra, where Ayona es comisionai, where we later found out that he called his friends to ask them about the existence of purpose. I mean, you could see he was disconnected there.
Okay.
Talking to different experts, they told me, most likely your brother was experiencing psychosis.
So he had a psychotic episode, right?
A psychotic episode is when you can't tell what's real and what isn't.
Exactly.
I mean, you could suddenly be hallucinating that this place is on fire and you really feel it because the mind is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And then the suffering is as if the place really existed and you were actually burning. So what do? You panic.
Of course.
And after telling my brother's story, I can't even count how many stories I've received from young people, adults, from different places. I mean, I went through something extremely similar to what happened to your brother, and I'm alive by a miracle. So we have to start becoming aware and take these things much more seriously than we have.
I totally agree. Here, a lot of things get mixed together because we've already talked about how kids are starting to drink at a younger and younger age. Many don't even drink alcohol anymore. They go straight to drugs. And it seems very normalized. It's like the way to have fun, right? And there are many things that encourage it, like festivals, house parties, weddings, because now at weddings, some people even give out mushroom chocolates. What would you recommend to people? For example, parents, or to the children themselves who have been there, who maybe have a certain level of awareness, who say, hey, honestly, I wouldn't want to be in that environment, but I also wouldn't want to be excluded. So, what's the other way? Do you understand? What's the other side? Divertirse, no sé si fui claro. See where they can go, so they can be with others, and not necessarily with people who need substances to have fun. I'm not sure if I was clear.
Yes, but I think in the end, one thing doesn't conflict with the other. In the end, I still go to weddings. I still go to bachelor parties with my friends where I don't use anymore. For example, I don't drink alcohol anymore. Obviously, I don't do any drugs and I still have just as much fun.
Yes.
And it changes. I mean, sometimes you have to put in more effort, like when you're dealing with drunk people, learning to say, you know what, that's it, it's over, and working through the FOMO, and you keep working on it. It's a process, but you can get to that place and say, I don't need this anymore to have a good time. And people also stop saying that to you. I think the first couple of times, yeah, they'll say, take a shot with us, drink with us. But after the third or fourth time, they already know you don't even drink anymore.
Yeah, take it.
Because you don't need it anymore.
Exactly.
And then you start to lead by example. At the last bachelor party with my friends, well, before they all used to drink every day. Well, they already were. We laugh, but we can honestly say that the group has changed into a pretty healthy group, where there were already 3 or 4 who didn't drink anymore, where people drank much more carefully, no longer just getting drunk for the sake of it, where our conversations have changed.
Yes.
where we start accepting this vulnerability. Now we talk about the problems we have, what things we're missing in life, and we share from our own experience. We listen, we're empathetic, and we build together. And those conversations are something incredible.
Of course, would you say that, well, the first steps to make it really practical could be first setting boundaries for yourself, right? I decide not to take substances anymore that will harm my body, my brain, my behavior, my image, my relationships, and to try to be much more aware in the moment. And so the first boundary is with myself. And if I'm going to drink, let it be for a responsible reason, not to drown myself in alcohol.
There's a very simple rule with alcohol, which is not to have more than 4. Leave an interval of 1 hour between each drink you're having. Okay? Don't drink on consecutive days and no shots. If you follow this rule, you're not abusing the substance and you won't develop an addiction. Okay. So, for everyone out there, if you follow this rule, we won't have any problems. What happens? We suddenly start to develop what people call tolerance.
Of course.
And to say, well, 4 aren't even enough for the pre-party. No alcohol tolerance. The tolerance is if you take 4 shots in an hour plus whatever else comes along. And then you completely lose your ability to make decisions. I mean, that's when the problems start to have an effect to others. And what I recommend is 3 months of abstinence. There's something called neuroplasticity in the brain, which is your brain's ability to regenerate and be like it was before you started using substances. That's why people who have problems with substances go to rehab and spend those 3 months detoxing. And that's something I recommend to everyone, to all people. Before you get to this rule, try to see how long you can go without the substance. And from there afterwards, come back and use it in a modified way. But if it makes a change in your brain so that later you can have these 4 and already be happy and have a good time, it's so you know how to be in an environment without needing to drink.
Yes.
And it's hard. The first times I went to a wedding without drinking, well, you don't really have a good time. But I would go home and the next day I'd make other plans that wouldn't bother me. Go mountain biking, go do that.
Also look for other plans. But let's say you have a wedding you can't miss. And so you're there and you set your own limit first. And you also set boundaries with other people without arguing or trying to educate anyone. It's like, no, I don't drink. Thank you very much. That's how you would say it.
Yes, I also think that showing up at a wedding and setting a limit, there's going to be complicated. It's not like the alcoholic who goes to the club all the time and says, I'm not going to drink. Well, man, I mean, why go to the club all the time just to say you're not going to drink, right? I mean, I think if you have to, don't do it at your best friend's wedding, where the whole environment is going to make it much easier for you to give in. Start doing it beforehand so that when you get to your friend's wedding, you'll already have that self-control and those boundaries. And if suddenly someone offers you a shot and you don't want to explain yourself, just raise your glass, pretend to toast, and leave it without drinking. Notice
Realize and
they don't care at all. So I think it's also really easy to play with that, to ask for an electrolyte drink. So it looks like you're drinking a paloma.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of ways and lots of tools, but you really have to make an effort to set your own limits and start having a good time in these places without needing alcohol. And just being yourself with or without the substance.
All right. Now, within those limits, I imagine there will be 2 types of people. Those who might insist at first, but then respect your decision. And those who simply won't respect you and won't even invite you to their plans anymore, which would actually be good news. If not, it's an automatic filter. And with the others, well, like you said, it would be very important to make different plans, have real conversations, not just be so numb and like zombies. Go for a walk, invite your friend or your girlfriend or whoever to watch a movie, and look for plans where there isn't that kind of consumption. However, and here's where you come in as a champion of this mission, which I think is something beautiful. What are you doing? Well, if it's predominant in the culture that kids, I was there, you were there. They need alcohol to have fun. How much of that is linked to self-esteem, to flirting, to the need to connect or to connect with others? Why not? Why not? We're not taught any other way. What's going on there?
I think it's something we also see at home in our families. The first times we drink, it's out of curiosity and because it's right there in front of us, right? La bien. A lot of us have fully stocked bars at home, almost like trophies, where our kids see that every weekend we need substances to have a good time.
Yes.
Where the first thing we do when we get to a restaurant is order a beer or something to drink. So it's so connected that it's very easy for young people to notice it. In the United States, for example, it doesn't happen like that. In the United States, they often learn to have fun without the need for substances, where they learn to dance, where they learn to flirt. And I've experienced it myself, given talks over there, where after the talks, they throw a party with zero alcohol and you see people socializing at a party, which in Mexico, well, it seemed crazy to me. You know, being at a party at 16 years old without alcohol, at 17, you would leave, you'd get bored. You didn't even know how to react without the need for it. Today, that's also changing. This whole wellness part is coming in. There's so much information, and young people who are more aware aren't dumb. And there are many who say, okay, I'll buy into it. I can do it. And honestly, I've seen examples of outstanding young people who don't drink, who don't need it, who can socialize. And that gives me a lot of hope, right? But you also turn around and see families, and they're the same. They're parents who play sports, parents who do other things, they make plans. They're not always spending all their time at the club. And it's the same thing you were saying about your friends. I mean, I'm not telling you to stop hanging out with those who use substances, because I have friends I care about a lot, and they still drink a lot, but I just don't go to the club with them anymore. I don't go play paddle in the morning with them. And the way we interact and the conversations we have are very, very different.
Of course.
And with others, well, yes, who drink less. So if we make weekend plans and go on a trip, I mean, we share things, and those are the circles you start to create and where you want to raise your children so they can learn from that.
Of course.
And when you have that, I'm sure we can turn things around so that young people don't feel like they need alcohol, because that's not true. I mean, when a young person has good self-esteem, when they have good boundaries, when they know themselves, they're going to say no and they don't need it, and they can talk to the pretty girl. In fact, it's even more interesting that way. Of course, the other one who just follows the crowd and the drunk at the party, the clown at the party. In the end, nobody wants to be with the clown at the party.
Exactly. And you ladies watching us, let us know what you think. But it's always going to be much more attractive when it comes to men, right? And also for women, it goes both ways. Bilateral. Someone who shows up at a party, a wedding, a bar, a restaurant, wherever, put together, obviously confident, and who can talk and have a conversation with you, compared to someone who's already slurring, spitting, and just saying stupid things. And so it's funny because a lot of people, at least in Mexico and much of Latin America, drink to flirt, and they drink so much that they don't flirt at all. They become repulsive to women, right? And the same goes for women with men. It's a very, very paradoxical game, and it also makes me laugh. And a friend of mine who is in AA told me about this. He told me, even when I managed to get clean, I was still hanging out with my friends who kept drinking. I would see how they would just be hanging there, and they would fall asleep just like that, out of nowhere. And, well, the things we've all seen with people who have had too much to drink, and probably some of us have been there too. And the next day they'd say, the night was amazing. So he, after getting sober, would say, amazing? You were like a walking corpse. I mean, you didn't even realize it. So amazing in what way? So also, out of self-respect, Eddie, if you want to present yourself well to the world, to have better opportunities, maybe even at a business meeting, with a woman, with a man, you have to watch your intake, right?
The conversations change a lot. Nowadays, since I don't drink at weddings, the networking itself, conversations with much more interesting people. Nobody likes someone who's slurring. Nobody likes taking care of drunk people. Absolutely nobody. And the people who take care of themselves, who are responsible, are the kind of people you end up attracting. I mean, it's strange, but honestly, this new process I'm going through is incredible, and I highly recommend it in every way. And something your friend also said is, yeah, the night was great, and substances give you dopamine. That's something you have to understand. Dopamine is often linked to happiness. I recommend that everyone listening learn about the difference between dopamine and serotonin, and I'll share the link with you later, and I'll send you the video. It's an extraordinary video that clearly explains how we should be aiming for serotonin, not dopamine, which is more about pleasure, which is what social media gives us, what all substance use gives us, all these trivial things, shopping, all of that. None of that is useful in life. And serotonin, on the other hand, is cumulative. It can be shared with more people. It's about being, instead of having, and when I heard that, it made a lot of sense to me. And the people who drink and say the night was amazing, the next day they probably don't even believe it themselves because they feel terrible. All of us who have had too many drinks, the next day you have a terrible hangover and you say, I'm never drinking again, right? And then when those effects wear off, you're already trying to ease it with a beer, right? Yeah. And it's this never-ending vicious cycle until it blows up. And we also need to look at people in recovery in a different way. I think a lot of times we look down on these people who are alcoholics, who went to rehab, when it should be completely the opposite.
Of course.
These people have already faced that problem they had and said, I want to change. And I'm going to change it for the better. And I assure you that your friend's life is much better than it was before the party. The truth is, there are a lot of people who remain unaware because this is so accepted. They are in that state of unawareness, and they can keep going like that until they kill someone, until they die of cirrhosis, until something happens, right? And something will end up happening.
It's going to end up happening. And I really like that you mentioned this about dopamine and serotonin, because right now I want to move a bit toward the topic of suicide and how to process grief. Above all, how you processed it. Dopamine, just to emphasize what you said, and hopefully if you can share the link to the video with us so we can put it in the description and people can watch it. It's the search for instant gratification and reward. It's that you're constantly needing more to feel less. And that's what creates tolerance. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's alcohol, pornography, video games, shopping, and sex. And when you have a fulfilling life where you say, I like who I am, I like what I do, I have purpose, I like my life, even though I have problems, then you start to cultivate a kind of gratitude. You live with gratitude and serotonin, and you live in satisfaction. So with dopamine, you would say, this feels great, I need more of this, or I want more of this. And with serotonin, so to speak, you would say, this feels great, I don't need more than this. And that changes everything. And I've had and still have bars, clubs, restaurants, all of it. But before I used to have more clubs and bars. And now we've moved more toward wellness brands like Ojo de Agua and others, to brands like Ojo de Agua and others. Honestly, I look back, and even though I had a great time and I had fun, and thank God nothing ever happened. Very unconsciously. No one ever taught me about alcohol, and my parents didn't drink, not even a little. So I didn't have that example. I did it to fit in, to hook up, and for everything, that's how I got into it. And I also heard a lot of really ugly things, and almost all of them were because of alcohol. From the one who cheated because, oh, he was drunk. Like, I didn't even notice, to the one who crashed the car, right? So let's try at any age to live a life with more satisfaction, more real, more present, and not numb and anesthetized. Because we're missing out on life. Do you agree with me?
And I think that becomes a virtuous circle, right? When you start to connect with this, you start to share it, and you start to like yourself more as this person, and you begin to grow more, to become more aware. You start to surround yourself with people who think more like this. Your life plans, the impact we make socially, right? Because also, when we're always seeking more and more possessions, many times we're very selfish in the sense that we don't care at all about what happens in society. And when we're more focused on being on this joy, on this serotonin, we do care about what's happening around us, what's happening in our society, in our environment, and you become a person who has a positive impact. And I think that's something really powerful in every sense, where you can find passion in what you do, where every day is more fulfilling, there's more gratitude, more connection, better conversations, and better relationships. Everything starts to change for the better. And this is a process. It's not overnight. You have to keep working on it. But when you get to that moment, you do look back and say, no matter how much fun I had, this is what I aspire to, this is what I want. And that's where I'm headed, right? 100%.
100%? You didn't know it at that moment. When you discover it, you never go back. And a lot to, like you said from the beginning, is social pressure, the social game, belonging. Anyway, I'm 41 years old.
Back then, you had to go look for information in libraries or in some random documentary on TV. Today, you have it in the palm of your hand, and if you search for anything or ask ChatGPT or Clodo, you can get information about these topics. So, if someone doesn't want to, that's their choice, but you can get informed and you can live better, a different life starting now.
However, Eddie, a lot of people today are kind of struggling a lot with their reality in that dichotomy as well of not knowing what's true and what isn't, in a cognitive dissonance of not knowing what's true and what isn't. I struggle. I'm already completely stressed out because of work or my relationship, and many times they think that the way out is to take their own life.
What's your view on suicide? What do you think about it?
I would go back a little bit on this whole issue of information. It's serious because yes, we have all the information at our fingertips, but we have both positive and negative information. And the question is, what are you consuming in a way? Who are you comparing yourself to? What relationships are you fostering? Like we were saying, ask ChatGPT. Yes, but ChatGPT, if you're telling it, give me all the good articles about marijuana and all the positive causes, in the end, it's going to tell you that using marijuana is positive. On the other hand, if you tell it, give me all the negative aspects of marijuana, this and that, it's going to tell you that using marijuana in my ChatGPT, yes, it would tell me that using marijuana is the worst thing that could happen to you in life. There's a lot of information and you have to understand what their business is based on.
Of course.
What they want is for you to consume more, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, drugs, and so on. And understand that these things don't affect you overnight, especially with substances. Substances affect you in the medium and long term in most cases. So understanding this, since we know this information, it's also about deciding where we want to focus it. The same goes for mental health, depression, and anxiety. There are many tools out there. It's about starting to use them and making them work for us.
Yeah.
For example, going to a psychologist. Not everyone will benefit from a psychologist trained at Harvard. No. The psychologist who will work best for you is the one you connect with the most, the one you can feel most vulnerable with, the one you can do the most work with. And it's also your own work, right? This guy isn't going to fix you. I mean, if you don't want to, if you don't make those decisions, it's going to be impossible for someone else to do it for you.
That's right.
Now, everyone who is going through a tough time, which happens to all of us, and in different ways. I think what I've also learned about this topic is that pain is very different for one person than it is for another. That the pain someone feels when they lose their dog can be just as strong as the pain I felt when I lost my brother. I mean, you can't really make these comparisons or judgments about each person's pain. But what we can do is start listening. And something we said at the beginning, I think what we need to start doing is sharing. And I'm not telling you to be like La Llorona and go around everywhere telling everyone your problems. No, you have to know which people you can really share what you're going through with, which people are going to listen to me, which people can understand me, and who I can build that kind of closeness with. Okay, and now, if you have any of these problems, seek help. That's the main thing. There's a helpline. I mean, there are many tools for anyone who wants to move forward, and they're free. I mean, therapy is available too. There are many foundations that have specialized psychologists who provide therapy for free. We'll also put that in the links. So I think the tools and the help are there. It's just a matter of deciding that you want to start.
I agree. And that's where I would bring back the question of,
What do you think, since you've been so close to suicide? I mean, you've already shown that there's a long process before making that decision. Why do people still see it as an option? What happens, you who have been so close to it?
Well, look, nowadays the statistics don't lie. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 15 to 29. We must be doing something wrong as a society for people to be choosing this way out. And just look at the world today. And damn, I mean, we're really messed up in so many ways. Nowadays, in Mexico, we experience it where organized crime is really embedded in our society, where, well, we've already talked about drug use, where we're the #1 country in child sex tourism, in child pornography, where there are so many negative things that we often put ourselves in this bubble thinking it won't happen here. And we don't open our eyes and say, this is happening. How can I help? And how can we get involved in social work? I think doing social work is something we should do throughout our lives and teach it in our families. Because I think that, and this happens, for example, in rehabilitation centers, when people arrive, the first thing they start doing is helping others. Because that cliche phrase, when you help yourself, is completely true.
True.
Because then you're no longer focused on your own problems and you're not seeing how you can grow and work towards something better. And I think this happens a lot too. And what about the topic of suicide? And also, we're really good at comparing ourselves to our neighbor whose lawn is greener, whose house is nicer, who has more money than his wife. All these comparisons about what we don't have. And we're really bad at looking at the people who are worse off and really need help and actually giving them support. So I think we also need to start changing that. And I think social media has amplified it. Nowadays, we see a lot of stories on social media from influencers, little pieces of their lives that really aren't the whole picture.
Of course.
And they post what they want to post. So comparisons become much more complicated. Before, you used to compare yourself with your classmates and there were 56 guys and that was your comparison.
Already pretty intense.
Intense, but kind of focused.
Of course.
Right now, you compare yourself to a guy from Dubai who has a life you could never have. I mean,
And there's a lot of lying. Everyone tells a lie to sell something or to get likes or whatever.
and I think that has also created a big debate about what we want to do as human beings. And so a lack of purpose, what you were saying, because many times we take this way out, well, it's people who are going through pain, and that is real.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to several people who have attempted suicide, and they tell me when I tried to kill myself, I wasn't thinking about anything else. The only thing I wanted to do was make this intense pain I was feeling disappear.
Yes.
That's really sad, and it's a
Tunnel vision, but when you look at everything behind it that led to that pain, there are so many underlying issues that we need to identify first, and you have to recognize them yourself when you're going through depression, when you need to ask for help. And I think talking about these topics is the main tool we have.
Absolutely. And talk about it with people who can actually help you, not just gossiping with friends or on social media or anything like that. And what you're saying is really important. People want to put an end to their pain. And since they haven't been taught any tools or they don't look for them or whatever, they think that means ending their life. But here I would ask you, Eddie, in your experience with all this and in your life in general, does pain simply go away or do you have to go through it?
I would tell you that it transforms and you still have it. I mean, suddenly my brother's birthdays come, Christmas comes, memories come, and the pain is there. And it's not that you go through it or turn it off, you just feel it and you feel that pain. But the way I saw it many times is that this pain I feel so strongly speaks to me about all the love I felt and this capacity we have to love. And so it's about how you channel that pain and where to put it, right?
Cool.
Because many times if you put the pain on others and then it's everyone's fault except mine, well, brother, you're lost. If you put that pain on yourself, like, well, it's my fault, that's not going to help you at all either. But if you channel that pain into something with meaning and purpose, that's what will help you get out of wherever you are. Of course, that you start to look at other people, the content you're consuming, changing your environment. I mean, there are many things we can do beforehand to this great pain where the solution is to take our own life completely. And there's also, a part about mental health, which is this issue of depression, this issue of anxiety, which is a chemical matter and an imbalance, and it's already been thoroughly proven. And we also don't have to be afraid of that. If someone is going through a process, they can go to a specialist to help regulate those issues. So now we have more and more information that someone can be bipolar, that they can, I mean, it's real and it happens and there are imbalances, but now we can have treatment to address those issues and see them differently.
Let me ask you a question, and I want to know your perspective.
Even if you go through a process like grief and transform that pain into whatever comes out of it,
There are a lot of people who, as part of their process, without a dónde, not a chemical imbalance as such, but maybe a very deep sadness or a breakup or something. But they really haven't reached a place where their biology is betraying them, but they're simply emotionally down. And many people who aren't even psychiatrists or psychologists are prescribing medication. They shouldn't even be able to, but they're doing it. What do you think about those cases? I mean, because I see that you're in favor when it's something like a disorder, or when it's something that your body is already craving because you're not adding it, but in the less aggressive cases, or less biological, or less you. With this whole topic that you defend or talk about addictions, what do you think about pills? Yes.
There are so many cases. For example, one of my brother's friends went to a psychologist who told him it was okay to smoke, that he could smoke marijuana. And I was like, your psychologist tells you that's okay? He said, yeah, it helps me with anxiety. And and I was surprised because what you're doing is just covering up the symptom, but that anxiety actually gets much worse with the substance and you're just making it worse. So there are things in practice where I really say, wow, we're in a bad place and we need to be much more aware of what these substances are actually affecting and how they affect us. So we don't recommend them so easily. Many times, yes, if it's an emergency case or something to slow things down a bit, stabilize. And from there, look for all the other tools. But a very famous psychiatrist in the United States says that 85% of these problems, emotional issues, all mental health topics, to face these pains depend on three things: eating well, exercising, and sleeping well. If you do those three things, none of which are rocket science, food, in the end, we all know junk food, how we feel afterward, and so on and so on. Exercise is the same. We also know how we feel after working out. If you eat well, you have more energy to exercise. If you eat well and exercise, you'll probably sleep better. There's also an issue there with screens. If the last thing you do before going to sleep is looking at screens, the TV, your phone, you don't get to your deep sleep, those REM dreams. So I was recommended to stop using screens half an hour before going to sleep. And honestly, it's wonderful. I also believe that what isn't measured can't be improved.
Yes.
And I do track my sleep and I do have this concern and you really see the difference and it's huge.
Yeah.
And so when you have these three things, right, that's already 85%. The other 10% is the people you surround yourself with. And we already talked about that. If you have these 5 drunk friends and you're the 6th, you'll probably end up being the 6th drunk, right? In some way. But if you have these 5 friends who are leaders, entrepreneurs, who do social work, and you're the 6th, sooner or later you'll be there too. And the last part is self-knowledge, where this psychiatrist talks a lot about writing, about the importance of writing, because he says it doesn't matter what you write about, things you have inside will come out, and at least now you know they're out there and you can start working on them. And that says a lot about self-knowledge, doesn't it? And self-knowledge helps you with your self-esteem and helps you with everything related to prayer, meditation, and spirituality, which I think we haven't talked about, but it's a fundamental pillar for people.
I love it. So I really like it. And above all, I take away this idea of getting to know yourself, not just emotionally, but even in your sleep. Hey, am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Am I exercising? Am I relating well with others? And now with so many tools, for example, I have the Aura Ring, and I think you have a watch there that I see you wearing all the time. There are 1,001 ways to measure those 3 things you mentioned. Also, obviously, look at your results, what you like, what stresses you out. That's another way you can measure things.
And something I would tell you, and you mentioned it from the beginning, is to listen to your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. And pain is one of them.
And when you numb it immediately without the need to calm it down because of an emergency or a specific case, you forbid yourself the opportunity to understand that this situation in your life has a purpose.
And so maybe it's a relationship or a work issue or a problem with not sleeping well. And you numb yourself with pills or alcohol or coffee and you keep going and you seem to function. And one day you collapse.
So you said it very well, and I want to bring it back. Listen to your emotions, give them meaning, and above all, transform the situation you're experiencing into what you really want to live with that self-knowledge and that awareness. Now, many times people don't reach this point very quickly.
At the very least, it's a process. But you also talked about the support community, which is very important. What signs do we often ignore in people who need help? They are shut down inside, smiling on the outside, and they may even want to take their own life. And how can we, as loving beings, friends, family, partners, detect certain signs and even help?
It's a very delicate topic where nowadays the most famous suicidologist in the world, who leads all the research at Harvard in the United States, recently lost his best friend to suicide, right? He says, I have all the knowledge, I know the behaviors, all the studies, and it still happened to me. So really what he ends up saying is that it's extremely difficult to identify who is having a hard time but is still smiling, and what you can do for those people. And again, it goes back to the importance of talking about things and showing our vulnerability, sharing, but not just for the other person, but for yourself too. Telling them, I'm going through A, B, C, D, I'm going to therapy, this is working for me, makes it much more likely that the other person will say, well, I'm also going through A, B, C, D, and will feel comfortable sharing it with you. They'll share with you, and then you build from a different place. I think that's really important.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. I talk a lot about human relationships, a lot about couples, and at my gatherings, well, it's a topic I like to talk about sometimes.
Right?
And when I'm the first one to talk about something, like, so how are you doing right now? And how are things going with Karen, your wife? Honestly, we're doing well. We're working on certain things because we're getting stuck on something. With that kind of ease, people really open up a lot about that too, right? And the same thing can happen, like you said, with something at work, something emotional, or something in everyday life. So let's be vulnerable. I know it takes a lot of strength, like you said, to be vulnerable, but try it. And it's not about dumping everything on someone else so they can save you and help you. But it's so you can see that you're not the only one going through this. So you can see that there are people who are already going through that process. And they can recommend a therapist to you, or they can recommend a podcast, a video, or something else. And from there you can start, right?
Of course. And going back a bit to what you were saying about pain, really feeling these emotions also helps them decrease. I mean, if suddenly your dog dies and you're really sad and you allow yourself to feel that sadness and cry for your dog, you probably won't feel as bad the next day. But when you numb them, you just keep accumulating them until they explode. So it's not just about having these emotions, it's about feeling these emotions and letting them pass. I think that's the best thing we can do.
I agree. And also, like we've been saying, sharing becomes a kind of social responsibility where we all help each other based on our own experiences. You, for example, with your experience, could have stayed silent and just gone on with your life, but you decided to make it a mission. What led you to that? Why did you choose that path and not the other one?
Well, honestly, in my case, I think it was kind of random. I mean, it wasn't even planned. It was just something that led me there. The first conversation I had with an influencer was because she had posted things about my brother, and a friend of mine reached out to her. She kind of confronted her and said, hey, you could get sued. I don't know. Don't share things you don't know about. So we got in touch, and she told me, hey, what I wanted to do was prevent this from continuing to happen. I mean, with good intentions. I told her, perfect, then let's share things as they are. And after that interview, which kind of went viral, people started asking me to give talks. At different schools, the first one being the one where we studied because there had been a huge party for the seniors, but they couldn't do anything since it happened outside of school, and they told me they'd like me to share my story to help open people's eyes a bit. And I remember that when they gave me that responsibility, I said, okay, then I really need to get informed if they're going to give me a voice. I want to use it to share this.
Cool.
Because of that, I've continued giving talks to young people. I've gotten more involved in the topic, and now we're starting the foundation kind of. And we're always talking about this mission and this life's work and this passion that you have. No, I still have my job at the bank, which I love, which I adore, which helps a lot of people with financial health issues, but this complements me, and it's not my everything. And your passion doesn't have to be your everything either. I mean, you have this podcast, but you have other things too. Other things, and in general, it complements you, especially when you're taking action for others. I think that's what we need to aim for and aspire to. And when you find that path, it's much easier to do what you do with joy and enthusiasm. And that's why after all these years, I can go give a talk today and then come to the podcast and keep creating this awareness that can help more people.
Ban. Absolutely. And in a way, do you think that also helps your own healing and honors your brother's life? Making sure his experience wasn't in vain?
I'm going to talk about my own experience because I don't know if I honor my brother's memory or not. I imagine I do, but today I'm much better than I used to be. I mean, I've never been in such a fulfilling place before, so happy, so well connected. It's been a radically positive change for me. Even though I went through the worst day of my life, right? There's a book that fascinates me called Soul for Happiness by Mo Goddard, where he also talks about the worst day of his life, which is when he loses his son and how he transforms all that pain into making a positive impact. And now he has a mission to transform 1 billion people so that they are happier and more prosperous. I think, of course, you can transform this pain and it can take you to great places and help you find yourself along the way. And well,
The truth is that I totally agree with you on that. I think those of us who end up on this side of the camera are usually here because we've gone through a very tough day or a difficult stage. And once you get out of there and transform it, I say it as a very simple analogy, but that's how it is. It's like when you watch a great movie, you discover something really important and you say, I want to share this because I can't believe we didn't know this earlier. And you don't have all the answers, and we never will, but at least we're helping each other. So that when there are those episodes or complicated things or something, we know that with just a click, we can listen to someone. Or we can schedule an appointment with a professional, or we can join a course and then learn more about the topic. And that's beautiful because it means we're not alone. Always remember that. We're not alone. Even though sometimes in the worst moments of our lives, we might feel that way. Do you agree with me?
I completely agree.
Eddie Del Villar, thank you for being with us, for being there for so many people in everything you do, for leading the way. Well, there's this purpose that I find very noble. Honestly, I don't know how many people are talking about this topic, but I really like the way you talk about it, especially since, unfortunately, you experienced it yourself, but you transformed it. And that's incredibly valuable. Before I say goodbye, I want to invite everyone to subscribe to this channel so you can receive more valuable talks like this one and help us reach more people. Give this video a like. That way the algorithm recommends us. And remember, you can also contact Eddie Del Villar on his social media. What are your social media handles? Eddie Del Villar,
You can find me as Eddie Del Villar.
Villarte, and maybe get closer to this process or learn more about what he talks about. Well, with me, you have a link there in the description of this episode. And actually, I have a whole program to help you through it. Grief over a breakup, which, although grief over a loss, I don't know, of a brother or a family member, is something different. In the end, it's still a loss. The mass, when you have someone you cared about, someone you loved, and they're no longer with you. And you have to, as you said, Eddie Del Villar, turn that experience into something positive for your life and maybe for others. So with that said, Eddie Del Villar, thank you very much. We'll keep seeing each other soon. We'll keep following everything you do closely, and I hope to have you back here often. Thank you very much.
Happy to keep sharing. Absolutely.
Thank you. Let's give Eddie a round of applause here, and we'll see each other soon.